Rick Carlisle says everything is on the table, including lineup changes to help a team try and get out of the current rut that they are in. This is the Gray Area right here on Kevin Gray Sports. My name is Kevin Gray. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to hit that subscribe button right there for all things Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube. The Dallas Mavericks find themselves 13-14 at home, losers of 5 of their last 7 basketball games, and welcome in the Detroit Pistons on Wednesday before hosting the Los Angeles Lakers for a couple of games. But what's making the rounds right now on social media is the idea that lineup changes could be part of something that is on the table for Rick Carlisle and this Mavericks team as they try to get out of the current rut that they are in. Rick Carlisle met with the media on Tuesday and had some interesting things to say about a team that's 11-23 when trailing after the first quarter this season, not playing with the kind of sense of urgency and desperation that a team like the Sacramento Kings did when they walked in and beat them and ended their 9-game losing streak. I asked Rick Carlisle, what does this Mavericks team have to do to play with a more sense of urgency and be better so they're not trailing and trying to come back in games the way that we've seen in recent days? Here is what Rick Carlisle had to say with respect to that.
Hey, Rick, how does this team play with a more sense of urgency so that this team isn't coming back from deficits, as we've seen in some of these games recently, and coming out with more energy that certain players have talked about needs to be had more in these games?
It's just pretty simple. It's a mindset. It's a mindset that's got to translate to, a physical disposition, and we simply got to do better. Everything's on the table at this point. If there's lineup changes that I think will help, then we'll look at them. But we're in a spot now where we're going into a very busy month with 16 games and 28 days or something like that. It's a lot, and we just today's practice was much needed. And again, we've got to take today and translate it into tomorrow, and then into Thursday and into Saturday.
So he says, look, everything is on the table, including lineup changes, which obviously got people perked up, especially on Mavs Twitter, because there have been several of you out there who have been calling for lineup changes to get this team jump-started when it comes to not only playing better in the first quarter, but also being able to play better in clutch time and win down the stretch. Now, the preferred lineup for this Mavericks team is Luka Doncic, Kristaps Porzingis, Maxi Kleber, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Josh Richardson. Josh Richardson, who has been hot and cold this season. At times, you've seen a guy be the two-way player that the Mavericks expected him to be with the kind of perimeter defense that he provides and his ability to shoot from the three-point line. At other times, you've seen a Josh Richardson be non-existent for this team, including shooting poorly from the three-point line and not being the kind of perimeter defender that the Mavericks expected him to be when they traded for him for the Philadelphia 76ers in exchange for one Seth Curry. So the fact that Rick Carlisle, at this point, a team that's 30-26 on the season with 16 games left, says, look, everything is on the table, is honestly refreshing, but more importantly, needed. For a team that is 19-0 this season, when they do lead after the first quarters, it has told the entire story of this Mavericks team all season long. When they are bringing intensity on both defense and offense, especially in the first quarter, you can tell that the energy for this team is much better. Luka Doncic said it the other night after the loss to the Sacramento Kings. Look, we have to play with more energy and manufacture more energy at the start of ball games, but also consistently throughout the entirety of basketball games, which for a lot of Mavericks fans, that was concerning because you should not need that kind of energy and inspiration when you're in the middle of a dogfight, when you're only 1 game up on the Memphis Grizzlies. Yes, you've won the season series against the Grizzlies and the Spurs, but you're not playing the kind of basketball that's inspiring any kind of confidence, not only team-wise, but for those who watch and support this team about if they do make it into the playoffs, can they have a sustained playoff run? I asked Jalen Brunson, also during media availability, what has this team done in terms of the soul searching that Rick Carlisle said that this team has been doing over the last several days to help them improve individually and collectively going forward to improve? Here's what Jalen Brunson had to say.
Hey, Jalen, Rick talked the other night about doing some soul searching. This team has been doing that over the last 4 or 5 days. What does that look like from an individual and a collective standpoint to help this team improve going forward?
Yeah, I think this 2-day break was probably good from within games to help us kind of relax and just get back to what we do and who we are. I think it's really important for everyone to be in the right mental space and continue to do what they've been doing to be successful. We got to keep doing the things that we've done in the past. We can't start thinking of new things to do, and we can't be complacent with doing the same thing over and over and over again. We just got to keep being who we are, staying tough-minded, and just trying to figure out ways to get better and win.
So Jalen Brunson saying, look, we've got to get back to the mental state that we were in when we were playing well on both ends of the floor. Remember, this was a team at one point that went 4-1 on their longest road trip of the season, a team that has also beaten the Utah Jazz and has played really well at times. We remember the stretch that they were in from February 6th on, at one point going 19-7 in a 26-game span. So we know what this team is capable of, but what you've seen in recent games, i.e. against Houston, i.e. against San Antonio, and most recently against the Sacramento Kings, is a team that is dependent upon one side of the floor or the other to bring them the kind of energy to sustain them in basketball games. And that should not be the case. The physical disposition needed on the defensive end, where teams are giving the Mavericks their best shot every single night, has not been consistent in the punch returned by the Mavericks when it comes to their play on the basketball court. And that honestly not just is on the starting lineup, but more importantly, specifically on Kristaps Porzingis. During the month of April, he's got a 115 defensive rating. That is a negative 3.9 for the month of April. In fact, in the plus-minus category, Porzingis is a negative 14 overall for the month of April, including a negative 24 against the Sacramento Kings when he went 3 of 13 from the field. So not only is it the potential starting lineup changes that are needed, but more importantly, it's incumbent on their second best basketball player in Kristaps Porzingis to get himself in a position where he's not only defending better the way that he's capable of in terms of sitting down and guarding and being able to alter and block shots, but he's got to find himself getting much better in rhythm in the first quarters, the way that he said that he needs to be in order to generate the kind of energy on both ends of the floor. Otherwise, this is a team that's going to continue to struggle. Yes, they welcome in the Detroit Pistons before hosting the Los Angeles Lakers for a couple of games, but then they got to go to Sacramento. They got to go to Golden State and play these teams who, one, not only have beaten them before, but the way that Steph Curry is playing right now, shooting the lights out from the three-point line, defensively, the way the Mavericks have played, that does not bode well for the way that they need to go to Sacramento and to Golden State in order to find themselves winning basketball games. Yes, right now, they are 1 game up on the Memphis Grizzlies, and yes, they are up 2 games on the Golden State Warriors and the San Antonio Spurs. But as we've mentioned, the 7th seed right now is not where you want to be. And while the Portland Trail Blazers have the 4th most difficult schedule left in these final 16 games, while the Mavericks have the 2nd easiest schedule, the way that they have been playing, it doesn't really matter who is on the schedule right now if they are not going to defend and play with the kind of intensity and ferocity that's required from them in the final 16 games to give someone confidence that this team can not only potentially move up in the Western Conference standings, but more importantly, play with the kind of consistency that is befitting of the expectations for this team coming into the season, where a lot of us thought this team could be a top 4 seed in the Western Conference. Again, we know the histrionics with COVID and what they've overcome, being 14th in the Western Conference, this, that, and the third. That seems like a distant memory now for a Mavericks team that's been struggling in recent games and in recent weeks. But what we've seen at times when they went on the road to New York and held the Knicks to 86 points, what we've seen at times during a 15-game span where they were a top 5 defensive rating team in all of the NBA, it's about getting back to that mental space that Jalen Brunson mentioned earlier for this team to be able to be the kind of consistent team going forward. But also, if there are lineup changes that need to be made, if that means Josh Richardson gets moved out of the starting lineup, maybe a Jalen Brunson gets inserted into the lineup, Tim Hardaway, who has been a starter before, potentially gets reinserted into the starting lineup, something has got to change, or someone has to be understood that this cannot continue in this way, the way the Mavericks have started out first quarters this season. So a wake-up call needs to be given to someone in this starting lineup. And it may be Josh Richardson who gets that wake-up call, potentially, if there are lineup changes that need to be made. Otherwise, if this team continues to play with the lack of intensity and disposition and physicality that Rick Carlisle calls for, especially in first quarters, it doesn't matter who is in the lineup. It's about the mindset that this team has not been playing with over the last couple of weeks to find themselves in the rut that they are in, especially now falling to under 500 for the season at 13-14 at home. Ironically, they're 17-12 on the road. Luka Doncic isn't the problem here. Yes, I know he scored 28 points in the second half against the Sacramento Kings, 28 of those 37 that he had, and it took him a while to get going. But more so than anything, the folks around him, i.e. Kristaps Porzingis, more consistently Josh Richardson and others, have to find themselves playing with the kind of intensity and fervor that allows them to knock down shots when Luka Doncic is finding them. But more importantly, as these games go on, they're not playing from behind in deficits the way that they have been, because that has zapped the energy. And another thing to keep in mind, when you think about these final 16 games of this season, remember, this is a team that was 9-14 and at one point on a 6-game losing streak. The amount of energy and emotional energy that they have expended on top of the difficulty of what this season has been from a traveling standpoint, from a back-to-back standpoint, has started, at least in my mind, taking its toll on this team. This team has really been in playoff mode since February 6th, trying to get themselves to a position where they're trying to get out of that 6th seed. And it may be starting to catch up with them with the amount of energy that they've expended, given the back-to-backs, the travel schedule, and the intensity that has come in a season that has been obviously truncated, given the amount of adversity that this team has gone through. Just something to keep in mind when you're thinking about the Dallas Mavericks going forward here. But lineup changes could be coming for a team that desperately needs a spark. And if it means lineup changes that include Josh Richardson and others, so be it. Something has got to be done in order to help this team get and reach the potential that it's ultimately capable of. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to hit that subscribe button for all things Kevin Gray Sports here on YouTube. This has been another episode of The Gray Area. We'll talk to you later. Peace.